Something is breaking inside an entire generation of young men. And these aren't just random tragedies. We are looking at the terrifying symptoms of a total system failure. The cage trapping them is completely invisible, and almost no one is showing them how to take the controls. The mechanisms locking this demographic into a silent collapse aren't economic, they're neurological. And they are operating exactly as designed. Look at the sheer scale of this. Depression has literally doubled among young men under 30. Nearly 4 in 10 have already tasted it. We're talking about an epidemic of despair operating just beneath the surface of everyday life. They walk through schools that promise knowledge, yet leave them entirely empty and fundamentally unprepared for the internal battles ahead. They scroll feeds that scream disaster, while their own minds quietly collapse under the crushing weight of it all. And the terror escalates from there. Anxiety is now consuming 1 out of every 3 young men. This isn't just everyday nervousness. It is a paralyzing, suffocating pressure. Imagine a constant, unending state of fight or flight with absolutely nowhere to run. The isolation is hitting them harder than their peers anywhere else in the world, effectively locking an entire generation in solitary confinement within their own heads. The lethal consequence of all this? It's undeniable. Suicide is claiming men at 4 times the rate of women. They feel this immense weight pressing down on them, and they call it bad luck. They blame the economy. They blame a ruthless job market. They treat the symptoms with medication, distraction, or isolation, completely blind to the actual source of the programming that is driving them right toward the edge. Data straight from the Institute for Family Studies confirms this gaping void. Nearly half of young men feel little to no steady emotional connection in their lives. Think about that. They report feeling like absolute failures before their adult lives have even really begun. Control over their own destiny feels completely absent. So to cope with this high trauma exposure, they turn to digital anesthetics. Gambling and endless scrolling offer a brief illusion of action, but they only serve to deepen that profound isolation. So why is this happening? We have to look straight at the invisible cage itself. Schools teach complex equations and obscure historical dates, but they leave the mind entirely blind to the fatal difference between the conscious and subconscious mind. The conscious mind, that's the domain of free will. It can analyze, reason, and reject harmful ideas. But the subconscious has absolutely no such power. It is a completely open vessel. It executes blindly. It cannot distinguish what is physically real from what is merely imagined. Whatever pours in, it physically executes. If you feed it a script of failure, it will flawlessly build you a life of failure. This brings us to the core mechanism, the self-image. Researchers like Maxwell Maltz and Bob Proctor spent decades warning us about this. Proctor defined the self-image as a cybernetic device. Think of it like an airplane's automatic pilot or a room's thermostat. It ruthlessly corrects course back to its programmed destination. You can consciously decide you want to change your life. You want to wake up early, work harder, be confident. But if the image locked deep in your subconscious says you are a failure, the cybernetic mechanism kicks in. The plane keeps flying the exact same fatal course. Your body simply obeys the hidden code. But here is the truly horrifying truth about this cage. It's inherited. It is not chosen. Young men arrive in the world with their subconscious sitting wide open, long before their conscious ability to think and defend themselves is even online. Every fear, every doubt, and every severe limitation held by the adults and the society around them pours straight in. The self-image hardens like concrete. By the time their conscious mind actually wakes up, the cage is locked tight. They never built it. Yet they will spend the rest of their lives fiercely defending it. This is exactly why relying on willpower alone is a dangerous delusion. People actually believe they can just grind harder to escape. But the paradigm fights back. The very moment a young man tries to break free, starts a new routine, aims for a better life, that cybernetic mechanism pulls him aggressively backward. It whispers, "Who do you think you are?" Willpower exhausts itself. It will always fail if the internal picture stays small. Eventually, he stops fighting and begins to believe his limited, terrifying picture is reality itself. Look at what is feeding that limitation right now. It is a relentless subconscious flood. The modern digital ecosystem is engineered to keep this negative stream constant. Environmental collapse narratives, societal breakdown stories, highly targeted algorithms feeding you proof of your own personal inadequacy. It's a state of constant, weaponized negative arousal. The conscious mind reacts with outrage or despair, but the subconscious silently records it as absolute reality. The victim mistakenly blames the outside world, never realizing their own internal software is executing a script of collapse. But the window for a deliberate overwrite It is still open. There is a clear roadmap to take back control. These 4 strategies are not optional self-help tips. They are literally the only levers that reach the actual control system of the mind. Rebuild the self-image. Guard attention. Practice mentally. Refuse appearances. Let's break down the exact overwrite code required to escape this. Strategy 1. Rebuild the self-image. Bob Proctor taught that the conscious mind possesses a unique superpower. It can originate an ideal image from absolutely nothing. The actionable step is brutal, but incredibly necessary. 10 uninterrupted minutes of daily emotionally charged visualization. You must close your eyes and vividly see the ideal version of yourself. Feel the posture. Hear the steady tone of your own voice. You cannot wait for external proof in the real world. The subconscious must receive the new data first. It must be pressed into the mind over and over until that old paradigm finally yields. Strategy 2 follows immediately. You have to guard the gate of attention. The conscious mind has the absolute power to reject information, yet most men never even exercise it. You must audit every single information source you consume. Filter ruthlessly. Cut out any stream, any creator, any feed that shrinks your self-picture. Cut the comparison traps. Cut the collapse narratives. Replace them entirely with material that actually supports your new image. Understand this. If you do not consciously reject the poison, your subconscious simply accepts it by default. Strategy 3 is where the weak fail. Understand this. Mental practice is exactly like physical practice. The shift from powerlessness to ultimate agency doesn't come from a single fleeting moment of insight. It comes from saturating the mind. Select 3 core statements of who you intend to be. Write them by hand every single day. Speak them aloud. Continue long past the point of boredom. Make no mistake, boredom is just the old paradigm fighting for its life. It's actively resisting your escape. Push through the sheer exhaustion of repetition until you physically shatter the old software. And strategy 4 is your daily battlefield. Refuse appearance-based thinking. Humans are deeply wired to let their physical environment dictate their internal thoughts. If you see a setback, you naturally think a negative thought. That is the easy, highly reactive path. The higher path is to demand the intended result, regardless of what you see in front of you. When a setback appears, a failure, a rejection, do not argue with the appearance. Do not accept it as final. Immediately replace that reactive thought with the ideal self-image. Control the internal image, and you control the physical emotion, the action, and ultimately the reality. Because if these levers aren't pulled, we are facing a terrifying division. Look at the 3 paths currently facing this generation. Path 1. Current programming continues. Power remains totally external. The internal pilot keeps flying them straight into depression and profound isolation. Path 2. Internal mastery. Young men actually scale these 4 strategies and absolute agency returns. But path 3 is the most chilling, the partial gap. This is a permanent division of outcomes where a rigid new societal hierarchy is formed based entirely on who mastered their internal mechanism and who remained a blind slave to it. This triggers a massive shift in global power. A generation that cannot rewrite its own programming becomes incredibly easy to direct. Think about it. Educational structures prefer to measure compliance rather than self-mastery. Media conglomerates profit massively from your continuous negative arousal. The systems in place prefer a population that merely reacts rather than one that originates independent, powerful thought. This unwritten programming fundamentally erodes agency. And when millions of young men lose the internal capacity to direct their own lives, external forces will gladly step in to pull the strings.
The cage was never made of external circumstances. It was never the economy. It was constructed of an image, installed before the ability to even question it existed. The young men struggling today aren't inherently weak. They are simply running lethal software they did not choose. The strategies to rewrite the code are sitting right in front of them. But if they ignore them, the automatic pilot continues its quiet, fatal work. I leave you with this unresolved question. Which of these paths is the next generation already walking?